Welcome to Season 4 of the Comfortably Hungry podcast, where yesterday's dinner is tomorrow's history. If you're a peckish person who is curious about the history of food and drink, then you're in the right place. I'm Sam Bilton, an author of some rather niche books who adores her history and food. And by the end of this podcast, I hope you'll be a fan of food history too. You can see what historical delicacies I'm cooking at the moment on Instagram, Threads or Blue Sky at Mrs. Bilton, that's with 2 S's. In Season 4, we're going to be immersing ourselves in the fascinating world of fresh water, which as we all know is vital to life. We'll be journeying through the centuries to learn more about the food, drink and medicines water provides, its spiritual significance, discovering how water has been used to prepare and preserve our victuals, and how water has been utilised as a source of power and transportation for the food sector. Some of the topics will be obvious, but as ever, I hope that one or two will be pleasantly surprising. As with earlier seasons of the Comfortably Hungry podcast, the guests will be invited to bring a dish to the season's virtual potluck supper. And we've had some delicious contributions, I can tell you. The paid subscribers to the Comfortably Hungry Substack will also get access to recipes inspired by the topics covered in this season. If you live in Britain somewhere with a name ending in "wich", there's a good chance that in the past your town was associated with salt production in some way. And with good reason. Throughout history, salt has always been a valuable commodity. Roman soldiers were given salt as part of their remuneration. It's where we get the word salary. In the days before refrigeration, salt was vital for the preservation of food, particularly meat and fish. At a very basic biological level, we need salt to survive, but its uses extend far beyond the culinary and nutrition realms. It is used in countless chemical compounds and to grit the roads in the winter. The control of salt production and trade have even led to rebellions and wars across the world. But today we're staying in Britain and looking at the history of salt production in a town which was once a powerhouse in the salt industry. But I'm not heading to the coast, where much of our artisanal culinary salt is produced today. Instead, I'm heading to the midlands town of Droitwich, just southwest of Birmingham. I'm joined today by Paul Jones, LRPS, a local historian in Droitwich. Hello, Paul. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, hello.
I've been at the Heritage Centre today looking around. It's been newly refurbished and it's looking absolutely fabulous. And it's a fascinating story, the Droitwich salt industry. So why is this town so suited to the production of salt?
Well, to answer that question, we need to go back approximately 200 million years. It's a long story. This area was a huge salt bed 200 million years ago in the Triassic period. So you had a deep basin here. It would periodically be flooded with seawater. The seawater, due to the climate, very hot climate, the seawater would then evaporate, and over time the salt deposit would naturally build up. And this was the very system that was used later to produce brine in the industry. This vast amount of salt would build up, and then the climate change kicked in. So what happened? Sediment started to form over the vast deposits of salt, clay deposits. And then we have tectonic plate shift. So these plates start to shift. And this eventually, over millions of years, brings the salt closer to the surface. And then water filters through under present-day Droitwich. The source of this water has been traced back to the Lickey Hills. The water flows through under Droitwich, dissolves the rock salt, and then through natural fissures in the ground through pressure, is forced to the surface as brine. So that means that we don't have the vast expense and trouble of getting all the way down there to get the rock salts out.
Yeah.
That it just dissolves and it's brought up for us by Mother Nature.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing.
Yes.
When did people start to first embrace the salt, the natural production of salt, and convert it into a product that could be used for preservation and various other things, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute? When did that sort of occur?
Yes, that was in the early Iron Age. You're looking at about 1000 BC approximately, 1,000 years before the Romans.
Okay.
So it was a very simple industry then. Brine was popping up to the surface naturally, forming in pools in the vines area of Droitwich. So the people would construct wooden vessels sunk in the ground, and the brine would gather in these vessels, and that would keep out the impurities. It's very important that the impurities are kept out for boiling purposes. And then, of course, they would need to evaporate this. So they would use these briquetage pots, which are very porous and absolutely perfect for the job. That would go in, and it would evaporate nicely in there, and leaving only the salt.
You say the Iron Age, but it's continued for a long time, hasn't it?
Oh, of course, that's the beginning, the early Iron Age.
Yeah.
Yes, that's when we have really good archaeological evidence. But no doubt people were using the brine before that. And we know that animals were using it too. There have been animal remains found here, even a woolly mammoth.
Oh yes, I saw the replica tusk in the display. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
And the Romans, presumably, were they using a similar system to harvest? I'm going to use that word because I don't really know what else to
Yes.
to harvest the salt. Were they using the similar system to the Iron Age workers?
Yes, very much. It didn't really change that much at all. The area then was known as Salony by the Romans. The industry continued, but it wasn't really until later, the medieval period, the system really started to change, where they dug deep pits of up to 30 feet in depth, and they would line them with wood to keep out the impurities.
Right.
And then even later still, they constructed a pump.
What were the conditions like for the salt workers? This early period we'll start with first. I'm sure they differed later on.
In the medieval period, probably not too bad when you look at it, compare it to other industries.
Yes. They would have been outside, would they?
Certainly much of the work would have been outdoors, but drying would be indoors now, of course. Yeah. But it really wouldn't have been that bad when you compare it to other industries. And also a lot of wood would need to be harvested, and the Feckenham forest was used for that.
Right, so we've talked about the medieval era. I'm assuming that Tudor, Stuart, Civil War era, nothing much drastically is changing. I'm guessing the industry is getting more and more developed at this point.
Yes, you have various charters that kick in. From the Saxon, from about 700 onwards, taxes were gathered on salt.
Yes.
It's a very, very important commodity, and there are salt roads leading to everywhere, and they all start in Droitwich and lead from Droitwich to convey the salt to all these places.
They had a mint as well, didn't they?
There was indeed a Saxon mint, yes, minting coinage. At that point, this was a more important place than the city of Worcester, just 7 miles down the road.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's an extremely important place. The sheriff of the county had the rights to the salt and to raise taxes, etc., until the King John Charter of 1215. That then gave the rights to the bailiffs and burgesses of Droitwich. So they then had the monopoly, the right to harvest, to farm the brine and produce the salt. Also, they were the tax gatherers in exchange for giving the king £100 a year.
Which doesn't sound like a lot now, but I'm sure back then was an incredible sum.
In 1215,
in
it
1215,
was vast, yes.
So yes, Tudors and Stuarts, which is a period of history I'm perhaps more familiar with, sort of the 16th and 17th century. At that point, the salt industry is continuing to flourish.
Yes, a chap called Robert Stainer tried to break the monopoly of which I spoke in the 1600s. He created a pit, opened a brine pit on his own land, 2 pits actually, and they were probably reworked the old Middlewich pit.
Oh, okay.
There were 3 pits in Droitwich in the Vines. There was the Great Upwich pit, which was the gem. That's where the best quality stuff came from. And then there was the Middlewich pit and the Netherwich pit. And the Middlewich pit and the Netherwich pit, they were clearly fed underground by Upwich, but they would periodically dry up and become quite useless. And the brine was weaker, they weren't very good. So it was Upwich that was the gem. By the 1600s, Middlewich pit had dried up and was out of use.
Oh, really? As early as that?
But Robert Stainer rediscovered it, sunk these 2 pits there, aiming to break the monopoly and make his fortune. Well, everything was great for a while, and he was certainly making good money, but then it dried up again, and so that was the end of that. The monopoly wasn't actually broken until if we fast forward to 1725. That's when the monopoly was broken. And that's because of borehole technology. Borehole technology came in, we're going into the Industrial Revolution and all that.
Yeah.
Suddenly they could dig these 200-foot boreholes, which just completely blasted away these old 30-foot deep pits. The pit technology just went out with the arc. In came these boreholes. The brine just shot up, vast pressure. There was more brine than they knew what to do with at first. It was flooding the area because the pressure was so great. And that, as I say, just completely broke the monopoly. From there onwards, it was a free-for-all. People were digging boreholes everywhere, and the industry just exploded from 1725 onwards.
What about the canals? You say there was lots of salt here, so suddenly you must have needed means to get it out. And I'm thinking before the trains, obviously, that revolutionised so much in this country. I'm thinking the canals must have played a part.
Yes. First we had these ancient saltways, which I mentioned, very, very ancient saltways. And there's a road in Worcester which used to be known as Salt Street. And it was called Salt Street because the salt used to be conveyed along the road, along Salt Street, to the river in Worcester, and then it would be conveyed along the river in Worcester. Hence the name of the road there. But then the canals, as you mentioned, were coming into being. The canal here was constructed by Brindley in 1771, so that completely bypassed Worcester. 7 trows could take the salt along Brindley's canal onto the river. No roads needed.
And steam power?
Well, steam power was certainly used. Pumps were needed. The way the system worked was that the brine would be pumped up into huge reservoirs, and it's rather like the water tank in your attic. So then it would be gravity fed then to the pans for boiling.
Yeah.
So the pans used to be small pre-1725, but suddenly they held thousands of gallons, 6,000 gallons. They were vast.
Wow.
This was on a massive scale, which is why Droitwich eventually started to subside.
Who was John Corbett and what was his involvement in the salt industry?
Yes, well, John Corbett was born in 1817, Brierley Hill area of the Black Country. He was a Black Country man with a broad Black Country accent. His father had a canal carrying business. They would transport, use the canal network, coal, etc. This is most probably how Corbett came across the bankrupt salt works at Stoke Prior, just a few miles up the road from Droitwich in around 1850. Corbett purchased them. The two are inextricably linked. We just cannot separate Stoke Works from Droitwich where history is concerned. They were bankrupt because the linings to the boreholes were leaking. So that contaminated the brine and made it weak. And it's very important that brine is strong. Otherwise, you need to do too much boiling and you're using too much fuel. So it's not efficient. You're using more fuel than you're actually making out of your salt.
Yeah.
So it was very, very important that he sorted out that lining. Also, the country had been in recession, but it was now coming out of recession. So salt was rising in prices. So that was great for Corbett. He sorted out the lining with his engineers, and the country came out of recession, and he became very wealthy indeed. Then later sold his works at Stoke Prior to in 1888, the then newly formed Salt Union. And the Salt Union had to be established because we had cheap imports of salt from overseas, from Germany and even from India, and so on.
Okay, yeah.
So the Salt Union just had to be set up by all the salt works in Britain, have them under this umbrella company of the salt works, in order to rationalise the industry, set prices, and also, of course, they were overproducing because America had set tariffs, nothing is new, against Britain, in order to protect their own salt industry. So we just weren't selling the salt overseas, we had cheap imports. It was just not going well for them in the 1870s, 1880s. So those things needed to be sorted out. The Salt Union was formed in Liverpool. They then, the following year, ended up buying Stoke Works. Corbett reluctantly sold out to them. He became to bitterly regret that. He really did. And a few years later, he remained in management, but a few years later he left, very acrimonious, and he had very, very poor health by that stage. But he made huge sweeping changes in the industry. He built a model village for his workers at Stoke Works.
Like Bourneville?
If you like, yes, very much so. He improved working conditions for the workers. The village was very clean and tidy, terrace rows for them, there were shops, pubs, etc., school for them, a whole community. They had their own fire station. Fairly early on, he abolished female labour in his industry. So, but that didn't affect the wages because he raised the wages of the men.
Okay.
And also shortened their working hours. So, and that resulted in a rise in production. It was all going very well, and he was a very, very popular man. Corbett built his great chateau Impany near Droitwich. Beautiful building, you must see it to believe it. It took about 11 years to construct it.
Did it? Wow.
Fantastic building. Sadly, he and his wife were not on good terms at all by that stage. As I say, it had taken 11 years to build this place, and a lot can happen in a relationship in 11 years.
Yes.
So his wife and his daughters ended up being pretty much banished to their estate in North Wales called Ynys Maen Gwyn, which is in Tywyn. Corbett ended up living in Impany alone.
Oh. It's quite sad.
It is really. So things didn't really go well for his sell-out to the Salt Union. The Salt Union also purchased many salt works in Droitwich, but there were still some independents that didn't sell out to the Salt Union. They refused to.
Did the Salt Union buy salt works across the country or just in Droitwich? Were they buying it in like Nantwich and in Cheshire, for example?
Yes, they did. They started in Liverpool, and it was the idea of a chap in Liverpool. So they started with the Cheshire ones. The Cheshire ones were far less profitable than the Droitwich ones because our brine is so much purer than theirs. Our brine, you can fast boil it because of the lack of impurities, which means that you can also create very fine-grained salt.
Yeah.
You can only do that by fast boiling brine. In Cheshire, they couldn't do that because of the impurities, particularly the high amounts of calcium, which is just not good at all. That meant they had to slow boil it. So by slow boiling, the salt crystals grow quite large and you end up with these flakes. But you have to slow boil in order to get rid of the impurities first. You just can't fast boil it.
Interesting.
So yeah, ours is the creme de la creme. In fact, it's actually the best in Europe, even better than the Dead Sea.
There you go, you heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
If the production is starting to wane in Droitwich, it isn't the end of the town, though, is it, in terms of its relationship with salt?
No, it isn't. The last salt works to close in Droitwich were the Covercroft Salt Works, and they closed in 1922.
Right.
So that was when the salt industry stopped in Droitwich, but they continued just a couple of miles up the road at Stoke Works. Those were later taken over in 1937 by ICI, so it went from being Salt Union to ICI. And then ICI in the 1950s abolished the old open pan method, with huge open pans with chaps boiling the stuff and raking the salt forming on the surface. And they went over to this new vacuum system and these huge vacuum chambers in which the brine went up into those, and it was a highly automated, clean system, completely different to the old ways.
Yeah.
So that kicked in the 1950s. That sadly closed sadly for them, it closed in 1972.
Wow.
And it had to close because of the subsidence in Droitwich. So many places were subsiding. And so it was the Droitwich Town Council who said, look, you've got to close. Otherwise, you're facing lawsuits here.
Yeah.
We're building new housing estates and you're causing Droitwich to subside because of the vast amounts of brine you're pumping out from under us.
Yes.
So ICI had to close it, and that was it for this area from 1972 onwards.
But the brine is still there, and we're going to hear from Churchfields shortly.
It's still there.
As a sort of a sideline, not from a culinary perspective, the brine was used for medical purposes, wasn't it? The town was invigorated in a way as a health spa.
Very, very much so. Corbett was really keen to convert the town from an industrial town to a beautiful spa town. But he wasn't the first. That story actually began in the late 1820s.
Right.
When Corbett was still, he was only a few years old then.
Yes.
And then a local doctor, Dr. Jakes, he treated people during the cholera epidemic of 1832 in Droitwich.
Yeah.
And he found it to be very, very beneficial indeed. And then in 1836, the saline baths opened in Droitwich, which those baths, the saline baths, very small, about the size of a bungalow, and they were over on the northern side of Droitwich. So the saline baths were opened by Jakes. Those in the 1850s were then taken over by a chap called Gabb, and he realised he could make them much more profitable if he just really pushed them and boomed them and advertised them, which he did, and people just flocked in. It worked really well. And he extended them, so that was great. And then in around 1870, they were taken over by a chap called Bainbrig, who was described by one person as being as lean as a lizard. I've seen a photograph of him, and it's perfectly true.
Fair enough.
So he purchased the saline baths in around 1870, and it wasn't until 1877 that he changed their name to the Royal Brine Baths.
And did they have royal approval?
Well, the royal approval is a curious one, because Bainbrig, he also owned the hotel, which by his time was called the Royal Hotel. And it became the Royal Hotel in the early 1840s because Queen Adelaide visited it.
Okay. Yeah.
On her way to Whitley Court, where she resided for a few years. So he linked the two. Bainbrig linked his Royal Hotel to the saline baths with a long covered walkway. There was several hundred yards between them.
Right.
So I think that was probably his clause, if you like, to be able to call the baths the Royal Brine Baths because they were linked to the Royal Hotel.
Well, apparently Royal Tunbridge Wells was given that name by Edward VII, and he didn't actually, I think he did visit occasionally, but he wasn't a big fan of taking the waters at Tunbridge Wells, but he managed to get royal approval nonetheless. So there you go.
Okay.
However tenuous it is, it seems,
Yes.
I run with it, that's what I say.
So Bainbrig had bought the baths, he changed their name to the Royal Brine Baths, and that was really a renaissance for the Royal Brine Baths. Corbett comes into the story in 1887 when he constructs the much more luxurious St Andrew's Brine Baths here in the town centre at Victoria Square.
Yeah.
So those were the newcomer on the scene, those baths, the St Andrew's Baths. And those are the ones that people still remember fondly today. The Royal Brine Baths closed during the Second World War, and that's the period where we start to have the demise, really, sadly.
Well, they continued for a while, didn't they? I mean, the Heritage Centre, it should be said, is on the site of, I'm guessing, Corbett's
Yes.
brine baths, but there have been sort of versions of this right up until the 70s, wasn't it?
That's correct. The Royal Brine Baths closed in the 1940s due to the war, but the St Andrew's Brine Baths, which were better baths, continued. The bath known locally as the Big Swim, which really was quite a large bath, didn't close until 1975.
Wow.
And there's still plenty of people who remember that very fondly. 10 years later, at the private hospital, we had a new brine pool, 1985. So that was excellent. People were so pleased about that. But sadly, that closed in 2009.
Well,
So-
that's quite recent, actually.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And there is a campaign underway to construct a new bath.
Yes, because we should say there is a Lido here, but I
Yes.
understand from Catherine, the heritage manager here at Droitwich Heritage Centre, that they have to dilute the water.
Yes, they do.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to swim in it, because it is like being in the Dead Sea, isn't it?
It would be.
Or what it was like being in the Dead Sea when they had the pools here.
Yes, you just couldn't swim or dive into Droitwich brine. It is so strong. You couldn't do that. You just bob to the surface like a cork.
Yeah.
So they have to dilute it heavily to the strength of seawater for the Lido or Lido over in the park.
Yeah.
Everyone locally calls it the Lido.
Lido.
So,
Yeah.
although apparently the correct pronunciation is Lido.
Lido.
But
tomato.
Yes, certainly always be a Lido to me. Yes.
That's fine. The brine baths may be closed now, but culinary salt is still being produced close to the town today. My next stop was Churchfields Salt Works to find out about modern-day salt production, where I met Steve. Hello, Steve, and welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
Can you start with telling me a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Steve and I work at Churchfields Farm in Salwarp near Droitwich, and I'm the production assistant responsible for making Droitwich salt.
Excellent. And how long has the Droitwich salt or Churchfields Farm been producing salt?
So the farm itself has been producing it since 2017. The salt's been made and produced in Droitwich, we know, back to the Roman age, so over 2,000 years, and probably before that, because it's one of the few places in the world where brine naturally comes to the surface.
And why did the owners want to revive the industry after
I think they
this time?
saw the opportunity. There's no salt been produced in Droitwich since the 80s. So Droitwich has always been a big salt producer, and I think they just saw the opportunity and did some research, realised there was a market, realised there was some quick gains to be made from how to produce it without getting too technical. And that's when the family started back in 2017 to rejuvenate a very old industry, I suspect.
I know a little bit about salt, obviously. It's something I put on my chips and I use on a daily basis. But what's the difference between rock salt and brine salt?
Well, rock salt's mined as a solid rock, if that makes sense. Brine salt is a liquid, fluid, if you like, that's locked away under the ground. The Droitwich brine, we know, has been locked away about 200 million years since the Ice Age. So
Wow.
It's locked away as a liquid, And we literally go down to a well, pump it up electrically, and then bring the brine away. The brine here is 27% salinity, 10 times stronger than salt water. So that gives you an indication as to how much salt's actually locked away in the liquid.
And when we had a walk around before we sat down to chat, you were saying it's got the second highest concentration after the Dead Sea?
The Dead Sea, that's correct, yes. So we are the second highest concentrated. It's the most concentrated brine spring probably in the world as a spring.
Yeah.
Definitely in the UK.
Wow.
And it's the oldest as well, one of the world's oldest brine springs.
And just as a comparison, so the listeners understand, you're talking about 27% sea salt, which is what we would probably, most of us would think of as table salt, the stuff we would use in the kitchen. What sort of
about
percentage?
2.5 to 2.7, depending on whereabouts in the world you were.
Wow, okay, that's a big difference, isn't it?
Huge difference, yes.
So how is the salt farmed? I'm using that term farming, but
It's farmed, I suspect, I suppose. So we drive down from the farm to the brine pump with the big IBC container, food grade. We pump 1,000 litres of brine from the well into the container. We bring it back to the farm. And in very simple terms, we evaporate the moisture from the brine onto the beds. And then we're left with a pure natural salt, and that's all we do. There's nothing else done to the salt itself other than to grade it, sieve it and grind it. There's no cleaning needs to go on, there's no agents needed to be added to it. We just use heat, energy and to dry it all out, and then we're left with the natural product that we package away and sell on to our customers.
And actually, yes, I think that's an important thing, because I know you've got like the heat mats.
Yes.
That you use, but you're also using, they're in polytunnels, aren't they? So you're using the sun as well.
Two plastic polytunnels, using the sun's natural energy. We've got my big solar farm on the farm as well, so we've got about an acre, so we're producing our own electricity. And then we're using a biomass burner, which produces the hot water that you saw under the beds. So it's like a giant radiator, if you like, heat mat as you described it. That's all renewable, so we're burning chipped wood through our big 850 kilowatt heater. Which is what the farm uses for all its hot water. Even the washing down and cleaning process, all that energy is coming from there.
Brilliant, okay. So how has it changed much? I mean, obviously, they weren't using this sort of renewable energy in the sense that you are today, but how has it changed in the
They would have been burning things to make the heat, to boil the brine effectively. The actual method itself doesn't matter where you go in the world, you're evaporating by using heat, so either heat from a fire or heat from the sun. A lot of Mediterranean countries are using pools at the side of the sea.
Oh, that's true,
And evaporating it. We're not doing anything a great deal different from that. We're probably a lot cleaner and a lot tidier than they were back in 150 years ago. As you've seen yourself, although it's, the salt destroys everything we use, it is clean and tidy and we don't have any waste.
Yeah. So I guess realistically, the end product, in a way, hasn't seen the light of day for...
Well, if the figures are to be believed, 200 million years to the last ice age. So that's what they talk about.
Okay, that's a long time.
It is a long time. It is a long time.
You might have just won the
oldest product.
The prize for the oldest product featured on the podcast. Well, this ever.
Older than the butter.
Older than the bog butter, and and I've also done an episode recently on watercress. They're older than the chalk stream, the water that's coming up from the chalk stream. And does it contain any other minerals?
There are trace minerals in there, but again, they're trace minerals. We're very proud of the fact we are a pure sodium chlorate. So we are in the process of having some sampling done, which we need to do quite regularly, but there's nothing of any negligible amount or measurable amount at the moment that we're aware of. So
let's talk about the types of salt that you actually produce, because that was quite fascinating. So I know we'll post some pictures for people to look at on social media.
So our pure salt, which is, you saw the three grades, we have an ultra-fine salt, which is more of a table salt, and that's used by quite a lot of our local artisan businesses. We have a sprinkling salt, which the chefs love, which is smaller than a grinding granule, but not as small as a fine salt. And then we have a basic grinding salt. There are three pure salt grades. Then we have a smoked salt, so McNeil's Smokehouse, which is a local business, smoke our salt for us, which is beach smoked cold. We We have a charcoal salt, which is mixed with charcoal, trumpet mushrooms and garlic, which is a flavoured salt. We have a coastline, which is lemon verbena, dulse and wild fennel seeds, which is another flavour that we produce here on the farm.
Where can people find your salt then?
We're purchased online. We have a website. We also do a lot of salt shows. So we do the Droitwich has its own salt festival.
Okay.
So we will sell out the salt. Droitwich has its own food and drink festival as well. So we sell there. Our big festival really is Ludlow Food Festival. We've been selling there for a number of years. We get very interactive with the various chefs doing the demonstrations. It's our big event. We all enjoy it very much. Unfortunately, we got rained out last year, but sales-wise, it's massive, and it's nice to interact with people who are into their food, who realise that it's an artisan product, which is really what we're about. We're not here to try and compete against the big table salt producers.
No.
We're a pure. We think we taste better. We think we taste cleaner, and that's what we're here to show, and that's what we're there to show massively. So.
Yeah, and actually you've got a number of you've talked about the guys that you work with the smoking, the salt,
Yeah.
you work with a lot of local producers, don't you?
Yeah, we've got a lot of
products.
local bread producers, they love the salt. Sauce producers, both savoury sauces and sweet sauces, caramel sauces. We use the salt ourselves on the farm in our own ice cream. So yeah, we've got a lot of local artisan producers come and buy direct from us.
And is this area, because I'm from Sussex, which my listeners will know because they've listened regularly, so is this area particularly renowned for its food and drink?
I think so. Certainly in the last 7 years I've been involved here, I've noticed, as I was saying to you earlier, that the artisan producers are massively on the ascendancy. We've got a farmers market started back up in Droitwich. We're producing small amounts of meat that we sell locally. We've got local producers that are purchasing from other local producers, which is changing the way people shop, I hope.
Okay, the last section of the podcast, I always ask my guests if they'd like to contribute something to the season's virtual potluck supper. So what will you be bringing as your contribution?
I'll be bringing a chicken, which has been smeared in butter and smoked salt.
Oh, nice.
And then for a pudding, because I'm definitely a sweet tooth man, would be Droitwich salt in our salted caramel ice cream on a waffle.
Oh, that's perfect. And two dishes too.
Two dishes I'll bring.
Us.
Yes, absolutely.
And what's next up for you guys, or for yourself?
At the moment, we are producing flat out. We're waiting for the sun to come out because I can up production at that point because I'm using the sun's energy. Ready to just get stocked up, ready for our 3 big shows, really.
So, Paul, what are you going to bring to the season's potluck supper?
Well, I'm afraid it just has to be fish and chips.
Nothing wrong with that.
Really nice bubbly batter too. It just has to be.
Sprinkled with Droitwich salt, obviously.
Of course, yes. It has to be Droitwich salt, no other. Yes.
Excellent.
From Churchfields.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. A brilliant choice. Okay, so you've written several books, haven't you, on
yes.
Droitwich and its history. And where can people find those?
Yes, they are available locally in the Droitwich Heritage Centre.
Brilliant. And that has just been recently refurbished and it's fabulous, isn't it?
It's fantastic. It really is. It's a must-see.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. So I will pop links to that in the show notes. And thank you very much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you to Paul and Steve from Churchfields for their insights into the historic and modern salt production in Droitwich. You can find links to Churchfields and the Droitwich Heritage Centre in the show notes. Droitwich has its own Salt Fest, which combines a celebration of the town's history with music, entertainment and naturally food and drink. This year it takes place from the 1st to the 6th of September at Vines Park for what I believe is its 20th anniversary. You can also find Churchfields at the Ludlow Food Festival from the 11th to the 13th of September, where I will also be making an appearance. But before I head to Ludlow, you can catch me at the British Library Food Season Big Weekend on Saturday the 13th of June. I'll be exploring the literal and symbolic roles of food in Shakespeare's world with 2 of my previous podcast guests, Shakespeare scholar and food historian Sheila T. Kavanagh and Will Tosh, Director of Education at Shakespeare's Globe. And I'm very excited to say that we'll be joined by renowned actor Simon Russell Beale. I'll pop a link in the show notes to the British Library Food Season Big Weekend, which has a fantastic lineup, and I'm not just saying that because it features me. But get your tickets soon, as my experience is that these events sell out fast. As I alluded to in the introduction to this episode, salt has many applications. One that may not readily spring to mind is the use of salt in burial rituals. I had a chat to Dr. Dan O'Brien, a visiting research fellow at the Centre of Death and Society at the University of Bath, about this topic.
Salt is, and has been for a very long time, a purifying substance. It has the ability to purify things. It is seen by some people as being incorruptible. There's this sense that salt can't go off, it can't go mouldy, so it has this very unique power to it. And maybe those things allow it to serve as a sort of border or a barrier against the forces of evil that might linger around a corpse at the time of death, protecting the soul and ensuring the spiritual safety of the deceased person. Now, we know about this because the placing of salt on bodies was a practice which was quite widely participated in, and the consequence of it was that when people are opening graves in some of the burial grounds that have been archaeologically examined, these salt plates have been discovered.
Dan and I had a fascinating chat about the spiritual significance of salt and other funerary foods such as cakes and biscuits, and the special funeral guest who could take away the sins of the deceased by eating these victuals. Paid subscribers to the Comfortably Hungry Substack can hear the whole interview with Dan soon. Unbelievably, this is the penultimate episode of the season. There's just one more to go. After all this chat about salt, I think we could do with slaking our thirst, don't you? So how about a trip to India to discover the history of the architectural phenomena that is the stepwell?
Mostly it would be used by women throughout the day, because stepwells also served as social spaces for women to gather and talk and support one another away from male-dominated village squares or court, and offering a rare access to the public sphere. That is a place for women to socialize and be themselves, air out grievances, talk about lovers, just for the women to be themselves. There are very few social spaces, and most of these community spaces in traditional Indian societies were also very caste specific, where you are only allowed to be part of your gated community, and the only people that women would only get to interact with members from her own extended family or community. Stepwell, on the other hand, was a place where women could just gather as community.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you really loved it, please rate and review it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, as it really will help other listeners discover Comfortably Hungry. Don't forget to pop along to sambilton.com, where you'll find details on my books, which include my latest publication, Much Ado About Cooking, written in collaboration with Shakespeare's Globe. This new cookbook features recipes inspired by the food in the Bard plays and was huge fun to write, so I think it will be right up your street. You may also want to subscribe to the Comfortably Hungry Substack, which includes more detailed notes from the show. You can subscribe for free, but if you become a paid subscriber for £3.50 a month, you'll also get recipes inspired by the topics covered in the show and access to extra content. Alternatively, you can leave me a one-off tip via Ko-fi to show your appreciation. Just click on the relevant link in the show notes. Your support will help fund the research required to produce Comfortably Hungry. It also means that I can avoid including those pesky ads that may interfere with your enjoyment of the podcast. If you have any questions relating to this season's theme, you can leave a comment in the chat section of the Comfortably Hungry Substack page or tag me on social media. Remember, you can find me on Instagram, Threads and Blue Sky at Mrs. Bilton, that's with 2 S's. I'll be plunging back into the liquid world of food and drink history soon, but until then, take care. Comfortably Hungry is research produced and presented by food historian Sam Bilton, with sound mixing and production by Thomas Dinas of the Delicious Legacy podcast. Additional sound effects and music are provided by Zapsplat and Pom5.